Okay, so, you sent over this book, Positioning, and,
Yeah.
we dove right into it. And
Mm-hmm.
it's a book that's really about making an impact. Like,
Yeah.
sort of rising above the noise in a world that's incredibly crowded with messages and things vying for our attention.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we really want to dig into here.
Yeah.
Like, how do you make an impact? How do you actually get people to hear you? So,
Yeah. I think the core of it is that the book Positioning, it's not so much about creating something new.
right.
It's about manipulating what's already there
Yeah.
in the mind. It's
Yeah.
about taking what people already know and think and kind of fitting your thing into that.
It's almost like we have this preconceived set of, like,
Yeah.
shelves, and you're trying to figure out,
Compartments.
compartments, and you're trying to figure out which compartment your thing fits in.
Exactly. And I think one of the things that the book talks about is that people's minds are over-communicated to, there's just so much information out there.
It's overwhelming, right?
Yeah,
It's like drinking from a fire hose.
it is. And so,
And they talk about
yeah.
the difficulty of changing someone's mind.
Oh, it's impossible, right? Like once someone's made up their mind,
Pretty much.
you're not going to.
They make it sound like it's very, very difficult
Yeah.
to change someone's mind once it's made up.
So you really have to work within the framework of like
Yes.
what already exists.
And work with it. And
Yeah.
and I think they talk about having a very simplified,
Right.
oversimplified message.
So it's funny because you would think that in order to get someone to understand something, you would give them more information.
Yeah.
But they're actually advocating for like
Less.
less. Less is more.
Less is more.
And like, what does that even look like?
Well, they talk about just very simple examples like just do it
Right.
with Nike.
3 words.
3 words, but it completely encapsulates what they're about.
Yeah.
Action, just doing it.
Yeah. So it has to be very, very simple.
So then how do you actually, like, I guess this is where positioning comes in.
Yes.
Like, how do you actually get
You can't
into someone's mind?
change their mind. You have to kind of slip in.
Yeah.
And that's where positioning comes in.
So what is positioning then?
So they define positioning as an organized system for finding windows in the mind.
Oh.
So it's about
Windows in the mind.
yeah, finding these open spaces
Oh, okay.
where your message can kind of slip in.
Right.
And it's about recognizing that timing and circumstances are everything.
Okay.
You have to find the right moment and the right way to connect with.
And the right context?
Yes.
With someone's existing beliefs and knowledge.
And this leads to their idea that it's better to be first than it is to be better,
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
which is a really powerful concept.
Yeah.
Think about it, the first person to really make an impression on you.
Right. Or like the first social media platform that you really got into.
Yeah, exactly. Or the first brand of soda you ever had. You know, that initial experience often creates a very strong and lasting association.
Yeah, so like the idea of being first is so powerful because
Right. It gives you instant ownership of that space in the mind.
yeah.
And it's very hard to dislodge someone once they're there.
So what if you're not first?
Right.
Like most of us aren't creating groundbreaking, never
Exactly.
before seen things.
So in that case, their second most powerful positioning idea is if you can't be first in a category, create a new category where you can be first.
Okay.
So find a new space, carve out a new niche where you can be the pioneer.
I like that.
Yeah, and an example of this is like Red Bull.
Okay.
They weren't the first beverage company,
Right.
but they created this a whole new category of energy drinks.
Right. And they own that space.
And they own that space. So it's about reframing the competitive landscape.
Right. So instead of trying to barge into like a crowded room,
Yeah,
you're creating your own room.
exactly. And you're automatically the host.
You're the host. And so when you're thinking about carving out this new space,
Mm-hmm.
you've got to be aware of
Yes.
like who else is out there.
Absolutely.
Right.
You can't position yourself in a vacuum.
Right.
You have to know your competition.
Yeah.
You have to understand their strengths and weaknesses.
So like competitive analysis is a
Yeah.
big part of this.
Yeah.
And then the name, I feel like they put a lot of emphasis on the actual name.
Oh, they do. They say the name is as important as the positioning itself.
Really?
Yeah, because the name is the hook that your brand hangs on to in the prospect's mind.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, they're really against generic or just descriptive names
Okay.
that don't communicate a unique benefit or differentiate you in any way.
It's got to have something unique about it.
It has to.
Something memorable.
Yes.
Okay.
They say a good name can really accelerate the process of getting into the mind.
So we've been talking about these windows in the mind, and I think that naturally leads us to
Yes.
this concept of ladders in the head.
Ladders in the head.
So help us picture this. Like, what are they talking about?
Yeah, so think of it this way. Like when you think of coffee, right?
Yeah.
Certain brands immediately pop into your head.
Yeah.
Starbucks, Folgers, whatever.
Yep.
Those are on your mental ladder for coffee.
Okay.
Consumers organize brands in their minds by category.
Okay.
And so when you introduce a new brand, people try to put it on one of these ladders.
Right.
So if you have a new brand of coffee, you're going to try and fit it on that ladder somewhere.
So if you're introducing something truly different, you might need to create a whole new ladder.
Exactly.
Or displace a brand that's already on the ladder.
Yeah, you have to either create a new category or reposition an existing brand.
That's a lot of work.
It is. I mean,
But it's the nature of the game.
It is, yeah. And they give the example of Avis,
Oh, yeah.
the rental car company.
Yeah.
That for years they struggled trying to say they were as good as Hertz.
Mm-hmm.
And then they finally embraced being number two.
And they came out with a tagline, "We're number two, we try harder."
Exactly.
Which is brilliant.
It is. It's brilliant.
Because they took what could have been perceived as a negative
Mm-hmm.
and turned it into a positive.
Absolutely.
They owned it.
They owned it.
And they made it work for them.
Yeah.
And then there's this idea of the incomplete headline.
Oh, yeah, they talk about that.
Where you're kind of...
Yeah, you leave a gap.
Yeah, you leave a gap.
And the reader has to fill it in.
Right. It's like...
Which makes it more engaging.
Yeah, it forces you to actually think about it.
Yeah, and the more you think about something, the more likely you are to remember it.
And all of this really comes back to what they call outside-in thinking,
Mm-hmm.
where you're not focused on your product or your company. You're focused on
The prospect.
the prospect.
Yeah, the customer.
What do they want? What are their needs?
What are their problems?
Yes. And how can you position your product or service as the solution to their problems?
So it's like a shift in perspective. It is a complete shift.
From inside out to outside in.
Yes.
And then once you've managed to carve out this position, you're not done right.
Oh, no, it's not a one-time thing.
You got to keep at it.
It's an ongoing process.
Okay, so consistent reinforcement is key.
Absolutely. You have to constantly remind people of your position.
Okay.
And you have to be consistent in your messaging.
Okay.
Any wavering or inconsistency can create confusion.
And then they also make this point, which I think a lot of people might struggle with, is they say, don't fight perceptions with facts.
Yes.
Which is like, if you know you have the better product, but people perceive it differently,
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to win by just throwing facts at them.
Right, because perception often becomes reality
Yeah.
in the mind of the customer.
So it's almost like the feeling trumps
it does.
the actual fact.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you have to work with those perceptions or find a way to subtly redirect them.
So then this leads us, I think, to the idea of leadership.
Yes.
Because if you are the first to stake out a position, you have some big advantages.
You do huge advantages.
Yeah.
They say that the first brand to establish a clear position in the brain can often command twice the market share of the number 2 brand
Wow.
and 4 times that of the number 3.
That's significant.
Yeah, so leadership really is a huge advantage.
And so in that context, the statement, leadership alone is your most effective marketing strategy, really rings true.
It does, because being the leader often becomes a key differentiator in itself.
People just automatically gravitate towards the leader.
Yes, they trust the leader. They're familiar with the leader.
It's interesting they also point out that leaders actually benefit from having competitors
Yeah.
because it helps define the category.
Exactly.
So if you are the leader, your strategy is going to be a little different than someone who's trying to
Very different.
gain market share.
Yeah, if you're the leader, your focus is on maintaining and defending that leadership position.
Okay.
Whereas if you're a follower, you're looking for ways to challenge the leader.
And so what about those followers? What are some strategies for them?
So one of the big mistakes that followers make is they just try to be better
Okay.
than the leader.
Just incrementally better.
Yeah.
Like across the board.
Yeah, but that's not enough.
Okay.
You have to find a unique angle, a weakness in the leader's position.
Or a new way to connect with the
It's
customer.
a new way to meet their needs.
Okay.
And they talk about speed being important for followers.
Okay.
Like you have to move quickly.
So it's like a much more dynamic situation for the follower.
It is.
And they also have this idea of creating the perception of being first,
Yes.
even if you weren't actually first.
Exactly.
So can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so it's about strategically framing your entry or your message in a way that resonates with the idea of being first in the prospect's mind.
Okay.
So even if you weren't the first to market, you might be the first to offer a specific benefit or feature.
Okay, so you're sort of like owning
Yeah.
a smaller
Yeah, smaller.
first. And then there's this idea of high price positioning.
Mm.
So that's not just about like slapping a big price tag on something.
No,
right?
it has to be justified
Yeah.
by a genuine difference in the product or service.
Okay.
And it can be a very effective strategy because people often associate higher price with higher quality.
Right. So there's a certain status
Yeah.
associated with that.
Exactly.
Okay.
But it has to be a real difference, not just a perceived difference.
Right.
And you have to communicate that difference very clearly.
And they say that the biggest single mistake companies make is trying to appeal to everyone.
Yes.
And that makes sense in today's world where everything's so niche,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah, you can't be all things to all people.
Right. You got to pick your
Lane, you
Yeah.
have to focus.
And so I think, we've talked a lot about getting into the mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I think once you're there, the name plays a vital role.
Oh, absolutely. The name is crucial.
It's kind of the hook that everything hangs on.
Yeah. They say it should ideally communicate the product's primary benefit
Okay.
or the category it belongs to.
What about the timing around name changes?
Yeah, so if a name has become associated with negative connotations,
Right.
or if it no longer accurately reflects the brand,
Mm-hmm.
then a name change might be necessary.
Okay.
But it has to be done very carefully.
Because you don't want to confuse people
Exactly.
even more.
Yeah.
Okay. And they also don't like initials for brand names.
No, they don't.
So why is that?
They say that the mind works by ear, not by eye.
Okay.
So we tend to remember sounds better than letters.
Interesting.
So unless a company has already achieved a lot of recognition,
Mm-hmm.
initials can be a weaker brand identity.
It's interesting how they talk about company size,
Mm-hmm.
and they say size doesn't matter. Positioning does.
Yeah, I like that.
It's kind of empowering for smaller businesses,
It is.
because it's saying that you don't have to be a huge corporation
Mm-hmm.
to have a strong position. And then there's this idea of the line extension trap.
Oh, yeah.
I think this is something we see brands doing all the time,
All the time.
where they take their brand name and they just slap it on everything.
Yeah,
And it ends up diluting the meaning of
absolutely.
the original brand.
They say that when a brand tries to be too many things, it risks becoming nothing in particular in the consumer's mind.
So you got to be careful with that.
You do.
Line extension.
They give this test, the shopping list test.
Okay.
Imagine you're writing a shopping list
Yeah.
and you just write down the brand name.
Mm-hmm.
Would the person doing the shopping know exactly what to buy?
That's a good test.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if the answer's no, then your brand's probably too broad.
And they do say that there might be some exceptions.
Yeah.
Like if the competition is weak
Mm-hmm.
or the sales volume is small,
Yeah.
or if the primary goal isn't to build a strong position for the new product,
Right.
then it might not be as big of a deal.
And-
But I think as a general rule,
Mm-hmm.
it's something to be wary of.
Yes. Be very careful with line extension.
And they also talk about how these principles apply to more than just products.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking companies, countries, services,
Every
even large organizations.
Yeah, like positioning a country as a tourist destination.
Yeah.
Or positioning a service like Mailgram was back in the day.
Right.
Even positioning a large institution like the Catholic Church.
Really?
Yeah.
So it's really about understanding how people perceive things.
Yes.
And then finding a way to fit into that perception.
Yeah. And for retail, they talk about the importance of knowing the territory,
Okay.
like really understanding the local market.
Yeah.
And they talk about this research technique called semantic differential,
Okay.
which is a way to map out how consumers perceive different brands.
And then we come to this section, I think that's probably really relevant for a lot of our listeners,
Mm-hmm.
which is positioning yourself
Yeah.
and your career.
Your personal brand. It's the same principles.
So you need to figure out what your area of expertise is.
Yeah. What's your unique skill set?
What's your thing?
What's the one thing that you want to be known for?
And don't try to be good at everything.
No, because then you'll be good at nothing.
Right.
You have to specialize.
So they give some practical career advice,
Yeah.
like working for the best people in your field,
Mm-hmm.
learning from others' success,
Yeah.
building a network.
Networking is huge.
Yeah.
They say it's all about strategically positioning yourself for success.
Okay.
And they have these 6 steps to success.
6 steps.
Yeah.
Lay it on me.
Okay, so first you have to understand your current position.
Okay.
Where are you now?
Okay, number 1.
Number 2, What position do you want to own?
Okay.
Where do you want to be?
Number 2.
Number 3, who must you outgun?
Okay.
Who's your competition?
3.
Number 4, do you have enough money?
Okay.
Can you afford to get there? For number 5, can you stick it out? Because positioning's a long-term game.
5.
And number 6, do you match your position?
Meaning.
Are you walking the walk?
Oh,
Are you living up to the position you're trying to claim?
Got it. Number 6.
Yeah.
And so finally they wrap up the book with kind of a reiteration of
Yes.
some key
Like full
lessons.
principles.
And one that really stands out to me is this idea that meanings are not in the words. They are in the people using the words.
Yeah.
Which is just such a simple but profound idea.
It really highlights the subjective nature of communication.
It does, yeah.
What you say is not necessarily what the other person hears.
Right. It's all about how they interpret it.
Exactly.
And they also talk about the power of simplicity.
Yes.
And they say that successful positions often occupy a middle ground between being unique and being broadly relevant.
Yeah, you have to stand out, but you also have to be relatable.
Okay.
You can't be so unique that nobody understands you.
Yeah.
But you also can't be so generic that you blend in with everyone else.
And then they reiterate that rule, if you're not the leader, don't try to compete head on.
No, go around under or over.
Be creative.
Yes.
Find a different angle.
And if you can't be the leader,
Create a new category.
that's your best bet.
It is.
Okay.
And their ultimate conclusion is that the leader in any category owns the most valuable real estate,
Which is?
the top spot in the mind.
Okay.
And if you want to move up or establish a strong position, you have to understand and apply the rules of positioning.
So to sum up, I think what this deep dive into positioning has shown us is that making an impact isn't about shouting the loudest or having the most features or being the best. It's about being strategic and thoughtful about how you position yourself in the minds of the people you want to reach.
Exactly. It's about understanding and leveraging the perceptions that already exist.
So as you're thinking about all of this, we want to leave you with this thought.
What ladder is forming in the minds of the people you want to connect with?
Yeah.
And what word or concept could you own to gain a stronger foothold on that ladder?
Good question.
So think about it. Look at your own notes. Look at your own experiences.
Visit them through this lens.
Through this new lens of positioning.
The positioning.
And think about how these insights could change the way you communicate, the way you try to influence others,
Absolutely.
and ultimately the way you achieve your goals.
Yeah. It's a powerful framework for thinking about success.
It is.